Belinda Stewart. Belinda Stewart Architects is the name of my firm. And my office is in a small town, smaller than Grenada, about 45 minutes away. And I'm an architect who primarily specializes in historic preservation and in new construction in sensitive historic areas. I have a great office, great folks working with me, 14 people, and we love working in small towns. We work sort of all over Mississippi in small towns, working on downtown development and working on specific buildings.
Tell me about your attraction to small towns.
I think it's growing up in a small town. I grew up actually in an even smaller town than Eupora. It's called Walthall, where I'm now the mayor. And it's...
You're the mayor?
Yes, and it's a tiny town. It's like 160 people. So my husband said there are more dogs and cats than people. But I think part of it is wanting to be able to make change and being in a profession where I actually know how to do some of that, or at least to be a team player when change occurs. And I think growing up in my town, when I was a child, our downtown was still very vibrant. This was sort of the very beginning of Walmarts, and people haven't started driving away to more retail centers. They were still shopping locally. So I saw that vibrancy, and I saw people on the streets, and then slowly saw that die and saw it change, and saw it not just in my town but in other towns around us. It's just our economy changed, and the way we move, and the way, I guess, our allegiances and what we're looking for, and the ability to be able to find it in a broader area than we had before. It changed our downtowns, and it's scary. And when I got out of college, I left Mississippi and wanted to go somewhere that was better, where people were more allegiant to their downtowns, and we didn't have a lot of the problems that we had in Mississippi. And I stayed gone 5 years, long enough to realize that, you know, every place has its problems and every place has its challenges, and they're all changing all the time. And that, you know, I needed to go back home and try to help change and help make that better. And luckily I'd gained some really great tools of how to do that, at least in part. And so now my office has been here 23 years, and that's really been our focus. We intentionally focused on existing buildings, and that sort of developed into existing communities. We always say when we go into a community, we really adopt that community, or hope that community adopts us, really. And we try to do more than one thing. We try to look broadly and help the community see all the different things they could do at the same time, so any one project is exponentially better.
Wow, well, you're singing my song. So what do you find interesting about the Grenada project that you've just embarked upon?
Well, it's one reason it is so fascinating to me is that I've known Grenada all my life, and this is a town that we were close enough that we came to. And so I've seen Grenada downtown stronger, and I've seen that same sort of attrition and same sort of economic changes. But you have amazing buildings here. I mean, our town is much smaller. We have fewer buildings. We have great buildings, but the character and the quality of the buildings in your downtown, I mean, the economy here was better at one time. It was really exceptional, and therefore some really wonderful things were built. And you see that not only in downtown, but in the paths coming into downtown. And it's sad that some of it has been sitting here derelict and unloved for the years that it has. And what excites me is the possibility of being a part and bringing that back.
Well, since you have known Grenada for such a long time, what do you think the interesting dynamics in this situation might be?
Ooh, that's the million-dollar question.
It is.
Well, I think the primary overall dynamic is that people have to work together, and somehow or another the pride level of downtown is going to have to be lifted. I think there are a lot of folks who have given up on downtown, and finding a way to get that love of downtown and that hope of downtown, and folks being cheerleaders for downtown and putting their money where their mouth is. I think that's a big part of the dynamic that has to happen, but it won't happen overnight, and it's going to take a lot of pieces and parts coming together in a variety of ways to make that happen. I think the the governmental entities doing what they can bit by bit, private organizations doing what they can, not-for-profits doing what they can, but it's about finding a joint mission that everybody has, and then everybody working their way and their part of getting to that mission.
So how do you see this particular project evolving? You've basically stripped naked one building at this point out of the, I don't know how we count them, 6, 7, 8 buildings that we've got to work on at the moment.
And, well, I think part of it is just it's going to be a one by one continuation of work. And the way we've started, I think, is a good way to continue. We've started peeling away in one building from an actual hands-on standpoint, but at the same time, we're learning more and developing more and drawing more and learning how to use the other buildings. So it's like all the buildings will be in some sort of play at one point in time. And as long as that continues, and as one's finished, the other one's ready to go, and then the next one's ready to go, and hopefully the tenants are there ready to move in at every one of those stages, it's a little bit of a long-term goal, but it's a steady progression. And I think just continuing that progression of everything leapfrogging off the next will get us there.
So you start with an existing facilities report. Mm-hmm. What does that include?
It's sort of two ways to look at a building. We look at a building in terms of what that building offers. It's basically the challenges and the opportunities of that building. We really want to analyze and figure out, what do we have to fix? What are the wonderful things we want to be sure and keep? What are the things we can tweak and reuse in a great way? And then at the same time, we want to look at the use of that building. We want to look at how it's been used in the past. We want to look at how historically that building or buildings like it have been used, and help you look at ways the building could be used. And then what we call the magic is putting those two things together. It's taking what the building gives you and offers, and then what the potential of that building is, and finding the ways to work that together. And that's part of what that report gives, in a small way, but it gives that direction.
And what age are you thinking that the buildings that we're working on have? I know we were talking the other day about when we thought that the 42 South Main Street building was built.
I think that's one of the earlier buildings on the square. I think it's been modified, especially on the facade on the front over time, but from the way that building's constructed and the quality of the bricks, the materials that it's used, I think that could be, well back before the turn of the 19th, 20th century. I think it's definitely an 1800s something building. And when I compare it to buildings in other towns that look almost just like it and are built like it, some of those are from the Civil War era. So that building could really go back quite early. And we may run across something as we go that gives us more proof of that. But we're sort of, as we're uncovering, we're continuing to look for things that will give us that evidence.
So what are some of the interesting things you've been finding as you're doing the existing facilities reports that may be unfair because you have a lot of projects going on, but give us a couple of highlights.
All right. Well, one thing that's been found on the 42 building, which actually the builder Jim Stubbe found when he uncovered the wall, is there was a corner column, a corner post on that building, and the corner was notched out and open. And we didn't know that. It had been bricked up and plastered over and covered, and until someone took that skin off and we uncovered it, there was no way to know that. And that's a wonderful, that building is a corner building on the square, and having that corner opening up to the corner of the square, it's perfect. And it's exactly what you would have expected if someone had been designing this building in a way to communicate best with the square. So being able to find that there and be able to open that back up is really exciting. And then some of the other things we're finding are just great materials, like beautiful doors, beautiful wood, transom windows above doors. It's great baseboards that are tall and good quality materials that walls are made out of. And I think how intact those things are in some of the buildings has been a surprise. Like the second floor of the Dyer Kent building, it's like they just moved out. And all the details, the doors, the doorknobs, the transoms, it's all still there.
Even the old drawers from the pharmacist and
Yeah.
those old bottles with the that used to hold prescriptions and so on. That's one of the amazing things to me, that the second floors are untouched.
Yeah.
Completely untouched.
Well, the second floor of 42 South Main is, it's nothing's ever been done there. I mean, they just quit using it, so it's all there, basically intact.
In so many restoration projects, you have to undo the way the building has been traumatized, and there's relatively little of that here, it seems.
True.
What about the elevator at First and Green?
I think it's very interesting, and we talked about it. It won't meet code in terms of being an operating elevator, but it could be an artifact, and it could be something interesting that's incorporated into the building. We talked about in another project we had recommended stopping the elevator at a midpoint and putting something on it, so it's basically an exhibit, and something like that could be done there. And there are a lot of different ways we could think about it. Once you think about raising it and sitting it, it could be a small stage. It could be a variety of interesting functions.
Well, one thing we hear a lot about people wanting to have here is a dinner theater, a performance space, a music space. And this is, again, an unfair question, but have you worked on things like that?
We have.
I know you're doing one right now, and is it Gore Springs or Crystal Springs? Or
In Holly Springs.
Some springs or other.
And we've worked on some others. I think the First and Green building is an example. That open space downstairs, lends itself so well to that. High ceilings, but there are even smaller areas in some of these other buildings that could give a bit of those kind of functions if that's the way that you end up using some of these buildings. So there's just so much potential for different ways of using these buildings.
So how do we begin to make decisions about how to use them?
Well, I think there's a variety of ways. One is to look at what your market has and what your market allows and what's missing in your market, and bringing someone in to do kind of a market retail study who can figure that out in a educated way and with a lot of experience in similar towns, who can help really define what's missing here. I think that would be helpful. I think another is to look at other similar towns, to look at what kind of mixes they have and compare to what you have here. Another is to, through entrepreneurship programs and through other efforts that are happening here, look for what people would like to do. And the hope is that there's a magic there of someone who's wanting to do a specific thing, that the market study will show will go here or is a missing thing here, and then a building actually matches that use well, and then those things come together, and then it could happen. But again, it's that lots of things from different areas needing to come together to make this be successful.
Shall we look at some plans?
Yeah, sounds great. 4.5 feet so that you'll have room to go around it, but I think that could be made to work. And then the front of the building is basically will look like this, and this is the stucco that's there now. These are the windows and the little iron balconies that are there.